Hello, and welcome. It's great to see everybody as you are joining us, and we want to welcome you to the Equine Assisted Mental Health and Equine Assisted Learning Resource Network Facebook pages live panel discussion. So we're pretty excited about today's conversation. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. First and most importantly, over in the chat, you're going to notice at the very top the bios of our panelists today. So please make sure and check those out. I've also provided the websites or Facebook pages for our panelists so that you can track them down and find them later. They're also all on our Facebook group and participating in the conversations that have already been happening this month, so you can find them there too. So make sure, like I said, you keep yourself muted throughout the duration of our call today, or our panel today. So if you're not muted, go ahead and make sure to do that now. And also use the group chat to ask any questions or make comments throughout the panel today. And this is actually really important. I see a couple people who's not muted right now. Callie, I think maybe just try hitting the mute all button. I don't know. Then I'll have to unmute myself probably. Anyways, so use that chat to ask questions, because the coolest thing that's been happening is that the questions that you guys ask on the chat, we directly take over to our Facebook group, and we use them to stimulate discussion with all the other members who maybe weren't able to participate in today's panel. So really use that. Ask questions, make comments, and take advantage of that. So Callie and Camilla and I will do our best to keep track of those questions during the panel. And if there's time, we'll bring any ones that we can into the discussion or into the Q&A at the end, again, if there's time. If you're not familiar with the Equine Assisted Mental Health and Equine Assisted Learning Resource Network Facebook page, our aim is to create a safe and welcoming space for people from all backgrounds and walks of life to share, brainstorm, discuss, problem solve, and learn together in community. So every other month, our moderators team up to facilitate a learning experience, which we call a guide nowadays on Facebook. And it's based around a different topic related to EAMH and EAL. And this month, Camilla and I are facilitating what we call Tending to Our Industry. And each week throughout March, Camilla and I will host a different panel discussion with industry leaders that focus on topics ranging from our first panel, which was a review of where the industry has been, where it is currently, and what it might look like in the future, to last week's call, which was about provider competency, which was a very robust and rich discussion. And then today's topic, developing ethical, sustainable, and diverse practices in equine assisted mental health and equine assisted learning. And then next week, we're going to be discussing equine welfare. And then we'll wrap up with what we're calling the gathering, which is essentially bringing back most all of our panelists, plus our Facebook group moderators, for a really cool sort of event where we're going to go into breakout rooms and dig in even deeper. So really excited about that coming down the line. So that's what I've got in terms of housekeeping. Again, reminder to turn on, mute yourselves, and use the chat over on the side. And without further ado, we're going to get started. So please welcome Bianca. Okay, Bianca, give it to me. Say it out loud.
Stawiarski or Stawiarski, depending on how you want to say it.
And
hello.
And go for it. And say the name of your center.
Oh, you're a chicken.
I didn't even try it.
Warrida Holistic Wellness, which Warrida means wedge-tail eagle in Buddy Maya, which is my language.
Thank you so much. All right, now I think I can get through Shannon. So Shannon Knapp of Horse Sense of the Carolinas, and Tammy Harty of Wellness Through Horses. So big round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much for being here. Again, check out their bios over in the chat. And so now we are going to get started, and we're going to actually invite Bianca to kick us off. So Bianca, what I'd like you to do is just take a minute and bring yourself all the way back through time to the moment that you entered into this industry. And think about one word that comes to mind that sort of describes yourself when you started the industry, as well as the industry itself. Way.
You just muted me. That's right. Curious. For me, it's curious. And I can only say one word. And then the industry emerging. There's so much opportunity around the world. Anyway, Shannon, your turn.
Yes, and emerging. I'm taking notes.
All
Good.
right.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Bianca. Thank you. So for me, I would say I was definitely the things that Bianca said, but I also was pretty stinking clueless about all the business stuff that I had to know. I was clueless. I was an academician. I taught college English. I didn't know anything about running a business, and suddenly I'm running a business. So, and for the field, young, really, really young. And Tammy, I think that tees you up. Go, girlfriend.
Where's Tammy? Tammy.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, there you are. I can't see you anymore, but I can hear you. Take it away.
Well, that's the important part. So when I first came to this field, I was very passionate about horses and about the opportunities. And I would agree with Shannon when you talk about the industry was young, but I also feel like it's not cohesive, that we're not all moving in the same direction and not working together. So.
Nice. Thank you. So we've got curious and emerging. We've got clueless and young. We've got passionate and that sense of sort of non-cohesion. Very nice. Good. All right. That gives us a nice sense of kind of where you guys began your long journeys in this industry. So now Camilla is going to move us right into our first discussion question. Thank you so much.
So again, I think we'll take this in order. What I'd like to ask the three of you is, what do you believe are the core components of an ethical, sustainable, and diverse business? And what are the challenges in delivering those core components? Bianca.
Yes. Firstly, obviously, I'm probably one of the diverse group here. In Australia, it's customary to acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the country that we're on, and where I am, it's the Kaurna people. So I just want to acknowledge the Kaurna people, their continuing custodianship of this country, the waters and the seas, and also all around the world, wherever you're coming from, the traditional custodians of your lands. So that's the first thing. As a Buddy Mire woman, I need to acknowledge that. So the core components, ethical. I mean, we need to make sure that we're working in partnership with horses. We're not using horses. And I think what happens is we're finding that there are different views of how the horse is involved in this process. You know, sustainable, we are operating businesses, and this is the bit that I'm coming across all the time. As a business coach, what I'm finding is that people aren't operating they're not operating these as a business. They're actually operating this as some kind of airy-fairy, I'm just going to help people and work with horses. And that is not sustainable. We need to, these are legitimate businesses, and the opportunities especially in Australia, but around the world, are that we can operate successful businesses. We can help so many amazing people with this incredible modality. And also the other thing is that we're not all going to deliver this the same way. I mean, we're all unique. You know, for me as a buddy my woman, which is, for those who aren't in Australia, it means First Nations Aboriginal person. So for me, I'm really curious about the decolonising the space and seeing how that can look for us as First Nations people in our healing approaches. And so recognising that the person next to you also delivering equine assisted mental health or equine assisted psychotherapy or equine assisted learning, whatever you call it, is not going to be delivering it the same way as you are. And it doesn't mean that they're right or wrong, but they're just different. So for me, I'd like to see the entire professionalism of this approach and the business approach be increased, because we can't continue to provide this access to this incredible modality if we're not making money. You can't be subsidizing and expect this business to be sustainable for the long-term period. And, you know, especially in Australia, you can make money, you can help people, and you can operate really, really successful businesses. And I know this because that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm employed in this full time. And I make sure that every part of this business, you know, that my pricing includes what it costs to maintain and look after my horses in every aspect. So we're looking at this from that approach. I also want to talk about, you know, there's some really fantastic research coming out from Darlene Chalmers, which I love her stuff on First Nations approaches, including spirit in the research approach, to, you know, to seeing changes that are occurring by including horses into the process. So to sum up, understanding that we're all different, we need to operate successful businesses for this to be sustainable, and we need to make sure that we consider the horse's consent in being part of that process. And if you find that the horses are not consenting to being involved, then you need to change the way you're doing something. And anyway, I'm a little bit passionate about this, in case you hadn't gathered. I think I've answered the question, but over to you, Shannon.
Awesome, Bianca. Thank you so much. And similarly passionate about a similar topic. I would say for me, core competencies in this, of course, you need to know horses, right? You got to know horses, and not from the show ring, and not from, you know, none of that stuff sets people up to be good at this work. None of the normal horse world sets you up to know this kind of work and how to do this kind of work. I think you got to know people. You can't just be good with horses. You have to be good with people too. You have to be able to facilitate your way out of a paper bag, as I like to say. If you get yourself into trouble, you should be able to get yourself out of trouble. And you should be spending, you know, the time it takes, whether you're the horse professional or the mental health professional. There should be a lot of cross training going on. But the business piece is really the thing that has stood out for me. From the day I opened my doors, you know, along many years ago, we'll say 20. Well, 20 is a good number. 20 some odd years ago, I started getting calls from people all over the world saying, how do I do this? How do I do that? How do I do these business pieces? Because if you don't tend to those business pieces, you're not going to stay alive long enough to continue to help people. So my big message is that you got to get as good at the business as you want to be at the horses and the people. So you're going to have to spend that time. And so three legs of the stool, right? And horses are, I would so much rather spend all my time out in the arena with the horses. And if I want my business to succeed, I'm going to have to spend time inside on my computer, learning about the things. I call it the sexy underbelly. You know, everyone loves the idea of being in the arena with the horses, and it's amazing work. But too often I find that folks are kind of burying their heads in the sand and like staying up at the arena when they need to be tending to the day-to-day operation of their business. And that's, you know, it is not what I got into this field to do. It is not what gets me out of bed in the morning, or not what got me out of bed 20 years ago. It is part of what gets me out of bed today, because we, you know, can you do this? Absolutely. Is it easy to do it? No. And if you want easy, go to another field. Just here to tell you, save everyone a lot of time and misery. If you want easy, this is not it. If you want passionate, heartfelt, amazing work that's really hard, you're in the right place, right? So I would say that that's the biggest challenge that I see, is that it's so much easier to just do horses and people and not pay attention to the business piece. So that's a little bit of what I think. I love helping people with their businesses, because you know, as I was saying to the other panelists beforehand, I was an academician. I taught college English, which qualified me to not run a business, right? That was not part of my MO. And everything I learned because I had to, right? And I think that's the way a lot of us come into this field. Those who come in with a business background already, wow, that's awesome. And most of us don't, though. That's certainly my case. So anyhow, I look forward to hearing from others. Tammy, what you got?
All right, so that was a great segue into my background is business. And so I came at this from a much different perspective. I came from the corporate world. My previous life was corporate world, and I also was self-employed. So I knew coming in that I needed to figure out a way to make this work. I haven't been in the business very long. I started back maybe about 7 years ago, but I've done quite a bit of figuring things out in that time. I also have a pretty extensive horse background. I did ride competitively for almost 40 years, but I came to natural horsemanship about 15 years ago, which changed my life and really brought me passion about this work, because I experienced it firsthand. And then I was able to share that with others and came to it from that perspective, and then went to grad school and got my degree. So I kind of came at it from a different angle than a lot of people. There were a lot of things to think about. And I think in this business, we have to be super creative. And even if someone tells us that we can't be successful doing it a certain way, to try it anyway. I don't take no for an answer, so I'm pretty persistent. And if it makes sense to me, it should make sense to other people. I have a full-time, I've been employed full-time at this for almost 5 years. Have been able to manage that in a variety of ways. The last 3 years, I've been on my own property. I bought a ranch, turned it into a wellness facility. I take insurance. 95% of my income is insurance-based. I've only got one cash pay client right now. I pursued that by talking to the people that make those decisions, and amazingly got introduced to the clinical director at our Oregon health plan. And most of my clients are through our Medicaid program. Our Medicaid program here pays 20% premium for us. Part of it's because we're in an area that is remote in some ways, and also has a lack of credentialed providers. So there's that little niche that makes it doable for me financially. I also do longer than a 60-minute session. I do a 90-minute session. I also approached that provider, and it made sense to them, and we have a special billing arrangement. So I bill for 90-minute sessions. I take a couple of insurances. I only take the ones that pay the most, and most of them I do not because I can't afford to do this work for $75 an hour. So I've been really picky about that. I am full and I turn people away every day. I wish I had another therapist to work with at times because I literally turn a person away a day. I also use a biller so that I'm not using my time in paperwork as little as possible. With Leaf's help, I'm about to do a practice management software, which I think will also help me to spend more time outside and less inside. I was able to get a grant to do that. So I wrote a grant and got $5,000 to convert to an automated system, which also includes hardware. That's something that was available through COVID. That's another thing to consider is get in a network of people where you get notification of these kinds of things. It was a relatively simple, literally a one-page application process with a tiny budget. And I got $5,000. You don't need to be a nonprofit to get some of these grants. I've been very successful in getting some funds for specific things without being a nonprofit. I also have looked at some ways to make my ranch sustainable. That's kind of some outside the box kinds of things. I developed 2 rental units on my property, which help to pay the mortgage. And I actually converted a rental recently to a vacation rental, and I have been very successful with that. And it does not interfere with my ability to do my work with clients. I've also gotten some assistance with some horse care. I've got 3 horses that are sponsored by friends who pay their expenses. I utilize volunteers. I don't utilize them in sessions with the horses. They're to help us with some of the work around the ranch. I've had a number of opportunities that way because people want to help. And if they're willing to muck pens and clean horse troughs, that's a way that I've been able to offset some of my expenses. So that gives you a few ideas of thinking outside the box and things that have helped me to be sustainable in a full-time situation. So, and Camilla, to you.
Oh, you're muted, Camilla. I'm sorry. There you go.
Sorry, everybody. I'm clicking on the wrong thing. Thank you. We've probably got a little bit of time left if there's any areas that we haven't covered off on, and I'm just wondering if there's anything in the chat.
And you know, Camilla, actually, yeah, what was coming up for me was this idea back to, like, Tammy spoke to a lot of the kind of ideas for the next question. So I was just wondering if both Shannon and Tammy maybe would just speak a tiny bit more to the notion of sort of like what's coming up for me is this idea about sort of ethical, sustainable, diverse. Like Tammy started speaking to sustainable for sure, but if there's anything else from any of the panelists about that, I don't know, Camilla, if that would sound good.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the I guess whether there's any areas where any of you've been able to or have any insights around making your practices more accessible to a diverse population.
Shannon's got it. Good. Thank you.
That was one thing that really came to mind when others were speaking, is that, you know, it is wonderful to be able to charge what is required and receive what is required. I think there's a huge gap between what people are currently able to pay or willing to pay, and especially given the populations, the various populations that get served. So there's no requirement that you be a nonprofit in order to access nonprofit dollars. There are ways to do that, lots of different ideas and ways to accomplish those goals. But most of the clients that I'm passionate and that we're passionate about seeing come from backgrounds that are quote unquote diverse. And oftentimes they're diverse because they're socioeconomically disadvantaged and they're vulnerable, right? And so that's where I see a lot of need for having diverse income streams, right? And understanding there's more than one way to get this done. So if a client can only pay a small portion, how do you make up the difference? Where does the difference come from? I mean, I love cash and I love credit cards. I love full pay clients too. But the bulk of the clients that we tend to work with are not clients that would ever be able to afford to pay for our services out of pocket. And that's my commitment. That's who we are and what we do. And so, you know, we've spent an enormous amount of time creating the business structures and the infrastructure behind what's necessary to get a $500,000 grant to see clients who are, you know, survivors of sexual violence and human trafficking. So, you know, those things happen and they are possible, but they happen on the back of sound business practices. And that's the thing, you know, I think there's also something to the fact that having a good sound business background is super important. And also a background in how to do this, right? This field is different. It's not, there's lots of moving parts. It's not like a chiropractor or a massage therapist where there's just a one client and one person and, you know, you do the job and you're done. There's a lot of different moving parts, and that, you know, the questions about how do you prepare the horses to do this work. There's so much happening that I think there are a lot of nuances to running specifically a counseling with horses and equine assisted learning practice that you kind of learn by trial and error. So those are some of the things that occurred to me, and I'll shut up and invite others to chime in, but thanks.
Can I jump in? Yeah, awesome. So Australia's a little.
I think we've lost you, Bianca.
I think we did.
You're frozen. Oh no, this is getting really interesting.
Let's see. I wonder how. Let me message her. Tammy, while we're doing that, do you want to go, if there's anything you want to add at all to the conversation, just around sort of what it means to create or how you deal with diversity in your practice as well? You know, like how do you bring in clients that may not, I mean, you said you're mostly insurance pay, right? So
Right. But most of my insurance is the Oregon Health Plan, which is our Medicaid plan. So the bulk of my clients are low income who wouldn't normally be able to pay for something like this. And with the Oregon Health Plan, there's no copay or deductible. So, and they'll pay for as many sessions a week as I need to provide. And I do have some that come twice a week, but that covers that. I also take Tri-West insurance. So I see veterans, even though that insurance doesn't necessarily meet my threshold of what I need for a session, but because I have the bulk of them that do, I'm able to make that work. And I also pursue grants to work with the veteran population specifically. There's some they're underserved in some really strange ways, and the VA is a nightmare to deal with. So I have written several grants. We can maybe talk about that at the next one, but I did write a grant through our Oregon Health Authority to do one-day retreats for veterans. I also have an integrative program that we provide equine therapy, trauma-informed yoga, and battlefield acupuncture, which was funded by our Oregon Health Authority for veterans specifically. However, they're interested in pursuing other populations to provide that. And so that's been an interesting partnership that once you kind of open the door to that, there will be potential funding in the future for that with other populations. I was not required to be a nonprofit to get that funding, However, since then I have formed a nonprofit because I have some other opportunities that are only available to a nonprofit, but that's a whole nother bunch of paperwork, and you've got to work with the board, and there's a whole bunch of potential landmines in doing that. I chose to do it for a couple of reasons. I had a guy that wanted to give me money consistently, which is an interesting dilemma. And also I'm able to get quite a bit of unpaid labor by being a nonprofit. So there are some, and it opens a huge door to grants that are only available to nonprofits. So that's a way to kind of bridge some of those underserved populations or the populations that can't afford that. And if someone wants to talk with me offline, I've got a ton of interesting information that could save somebody a lot of headaches and nightmares. And I'm happy to share my experiences with profit versus nonprofit and why I chose to bridge both of them.
And I'll add in here as well. I think that there is so much that can go wrong if you have a for-profit and a nonprofit. It's really important to do it right. There's a whole section in my new book that's coming up on various organizations that have both for and nonprofits and how you actually run them so that you don't get the attention of the IRS in ways that you don't want, because you can garner the attention of the IRS in plenty of ways. As one of those folks that I interviewed specifically that have both structures in their wheelhouse said, if you're going to get a nonprofit just to access funds, you're missing a huge piece of it. It's a bigger piece than just going after grant money. It's an important piece, right? It's a motivator, undoubtedly, but it's super important that you do it with a bigger scope in mind than just accessing certain kinds of dollars and things along those lines. And I hear that too around, people. The latest, or at least the most recent craze is there's tons of money out there for working with veterans. There's tons of money. We all need to jump on that. And I say no. If you're in it for the money, you're in it for the wrong reason, right? There are ways that you can build pieces of your business that address what's current and fluent in today's culture, right? So that worm is starting to turn a little bit, and more folks are saying, oh, I need a program that works with human trafficking, because that's where the grant money is now. So chasing the dollars is not necessarily a very effective strategy. You have to have a bigger vision. You have to be further up and be able to see all different kinds of things coming. And I'm not saying we've done it all perfectly by any stretch. We've missed it and we've messed up plenty of times, but it is important to remember that if just don't necessarily allow yourself to be caught up in chasing the dollars and chasing the grant money, so that you can make sure that you've got your eyes on the long-term prize and not the immediate kind of what's up and in front. Does that make sense? Well, anyhow, I'm so used to talking on these. I'm waiting for feedback.
I think one of the things, Shan, that's really important is part of why I really wanted Tammy here is that what I've seen her do is really narrow in what she's really passionate about and really good at. And I think that your point is really well taken for those perhaps newer or starting out in the industry, where they're sort of like, oh, we could do this and we could do this, and this is sort of the hot ticket item, and this is what's really hip right now. I mean, remember when bipolar, oh my gosh, everybody gave everybody the bipolar diagnosis for a while, and then it was anyway, it's kind of the same idea. And I think what to me Tammy represents is somebody who had an enormous amount of experience with a specific population and worked really, really hard to figure out how to make that actually work financially. So I think that there's like these two examples, or like not two examples, but two ways of doing it, right? It's like, know your population, get really passionate about it, and figure out how you're going to make that work creatively. and then your point around if you're just starting, probably best to kind of drill down into what you're saying and pick one thing and do it really well for a while before you kind of throw the whole kit and caboodle out there. And I know Bianca's back too, so.
Yeah, I'm here. So, sorry, my internet just went whoop, it disappeared. But I agree, know your uniqueness. You don't want to service everybody. You just can't. And we know the areas that we're passionate about. And I mean, mine is complex trauma. I generally love working with complex trauma, people who experience complex trauma, especially those from ritualized sexual abuse backgrounds.
Oh no, not again. Oh, shoot. All right, let's see. What do you think, Camilla? What should we do? And you're muted too, Camilla.
We'll press on. Hopefully Bianca can come back and join us.
And get like a whole sentence out, she's saying,
yeah.
I want to hear what she's saying, and then she's gone.
I know.
Well, I think the super important thing has shown up in the chat box is, and this is part of being ethical, is that you need to have competency in the population you wish to work with. And I see that as well. There's a lot of folks that are like, oh, let me do this because that's where the grant money is. And well, do you have any cultural competency working with veterans? Do you know anything about first responders? And not, I think there's some real important information in cultural competency in working with different populations, not to mention clinical competency working with certain populations.
Absolutely. Yeah. And maybe, Camilla, if it's okay with you, we'll kind of maybe that'll sort of move us into the next question. Do you think?
Yeah, sure. Good plan.
Perfect. And then anyone who sees Bianca's show back up again, we'll just do a timeout and try again. Oh my gosh. Okay. So let's see. So we've talked about sort of some of the components to creating an ethical, sustainable, and diverse equine-assisted mental health or equine-assisted learning program. So some of those little nuggets I think we could draw out of there are competency and making sure that you understand and know your population, business skills, knowledge, ability, training, continued education, and like Shannon and Tammy have said, really digging in and doing the hard work of creating a solid business. And then, and Bianca as well. And then obviously diversity in terms of the participants that you serve and how you are able to provide services that are affordable and accessible to a diverse population. And I think there's another piece of diversity that I'm sure will get brought up in some other component around us as providers and the diversity issues around that. But we don't need to necessarily talk about that right now unless it comes up for you guys in some way. But so now imagine you've got this audience out here listening to you, and I'm guessing they all are here because they're really curious about what they can be doing to create, an ethical, sustainable, diverse business. So anything that you can share with them, any piece of advice, anything you've learned over the years, anything that people should consider, really carefully consider in the establishment of their businesses. And also if there's any additional opportunities or potentials that you have seen emerging in the industry as it is today. So we'll start with Shannon because Bianca is not back with us yet. So Shannon, take it away, and then we'll turn over to Tammy.
I feel like I've been hogging. Tammy, I'd love for you to go first. I apologize.
And hey, actually, sorry, but Bianca just came back. So how about this? Let's Tammy take it away, and that way then Bianca, we can catch Bianca back up again. How's that sound?
All right, here we go. So I think the biggest thing on my list is think outside the box. but also narrow down the population that you want to work with. And I kind of have two different populations that I specialize with, PTSD being kind of the common thread between survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence, which I take care of in my private practice. And then the whole veteran program I developed based around a retreat model. And interesting how I kind of got there, but some of that opportunity came up, and I have a facility that I'm able to do that. And so, and I have a partner that's pretty handy. So those things kind of helped me to go that direction. But once I started doing retreats, and I just do a 1-day retreat, but also integrative with the veterans, then when I narrowed it down to that, I saw some opportunities both with our Oregon Health Authority, which I did by meeting this gal. I do a lot of networking, and it's amazing what happens as a result of that networking. And so that's another piece of, there are a lot of opportunities when you network. And I mean, I'm talking going to a training, I'm talking about going to a meeting where I could meet medical providers who are looking to refer mental health clients, those kinds of things. And if you meet them in person and talk with them, they're more likely to not only refer, but to talk about, gives you an opportunity to talk about your program. I met the gal from the Oregon Health Authority at one of those provider where we met with physicians, and we've got someone that helps to facilitate physicians referring for mental health services. And that got me in connection with this gal from the Oregon Health Authority. So network. I mean, you just never know who you're going to run into. The other piece of that about the integrative program that we developed is there was a need for that, and we were able to fill that need. And I wrote a grant for the Oregon Health Authority, but I also wrote a VA adaptive sports grant, which is a federal grant. But some of the reason I was able to be successful in that is I have extensive grant writing experience back in my corporate life, and that takes a really specific set of skills. And so if you're thinking that, wow, that might be interesting to write a grant, let me just say it takes a lot, and it takes years. Like, for instance, this federal grant, this adaptive sports grant, I wrote it 2 years ago and didn't get it. I knew I wouldn't. That's how it works in the beginning. And then you get feedback, and then you're able to, I just made one little tweak to it then the next year, and I got it. So, but there's a lot of competition out there. And so if you think, oh, there's all this funding out there. Well, yeah, but it's highly competitive. It's highly competitive. And if you're thinking of doing something like that, you need to start now with taking grant writing classes. There are a number of them available at the local community colleges, as well as some of your nonprofit organizations. But they are very difficult to get, and it takes a whole different skill set to write those grants and get them successfully. Even if you'd have the most awesome program and you're the most awesome therapist, that's a whole nother skill set. So I would caution that. But for me, it's worked, and it's opened some interesting doors to get funding that I wouldn't have had access to otherwise. So those are some things to kind of think about.
Nice. Thank you, Tammy. Yeah. And luckily we have Bianca again. So we'll get
Oh my God. I can't believe how crap my internet is this morning. It's normally fine. Anyway, I'm going to talk real quick in case I get thrown out again. In Australia, we have the most amazing opportunity. We've got the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which we can access as both EALs and EAPs, or equine mental health people. Sorry, we use a different term. So that gives us a price guide, a maximum amount that we can charge, which is absolutely fantastic. $193.99 as a mental health therapist per hour. The other thing I've tried to do is to change and raise the profile, the business understanding of people here in Australia. So I've started doing online webinars to try and get people to put a more business focus in and help them be consider a sustainable practice. And so I've been doing that online with some great results at the moment, which is fantastic. I think it's really important to, I work with people in wheelchairs as well, so all the uniqueness that goes with that. And of course, I'm jumping in between 10 different questions and making sure I'm in the right space here, but making sure that you're charging the right amount, making sure that you have diversification both within your client group and in the streams that you're delivering. That's becoming quite obvious through what the other ladies are saying. And the same with me, I have diversification as well. I do stuff online. I do stuff internationally. I do stuff face to face. I also have this really cool arrangement with another EAP where she subcontracts to me 2 days a week. And so I can actually take on consultancy work in other spaces or work on my business each week. And then she gives me a certain amount of a percentage of her income. So, because she works at my place with my horses. So, I have 4 paid employees working for me, as well as volunteers as well. So making sure that whatever you do is diversified so that you are able to balance those peaks and troughs. And I think whilst grants are fabulous, relying on grants is not smart, in the sense that, government's ideas of the day so change as in each new interest. The other ladies were talking about, veterans and then this and then that. So for us, it's smart sense to make sure that, or for me, that the business is viable, and making sure that the diversification allows that to be viable. And so, as I said, we've got this amazing space with NDIS. I rarely take cash. Most of the time it's just invoiced to the National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Uh-oh, we lost her again, but we got a lot in there. That was good. That was the best run yet. Oh, this is great.
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up for me as I was listening was also, I realized we forgot to ask, or I don't think we got to the part around like challenges that you guys have experienced, so the opportunities you're all speaking to and the things that the nuggets of wisdom you're providing to the audience is so critical. But I also think it would be really interesting to hear a little bit about the actual challenges that you guys went through or see in our industry in terms of people getting started and creating these kind of businesses. So I think I've lost track whose turn it is. Do either of you remember? Okay, take it away, Shannon.
Yeah, I wanted to speak on that previous question, and it ties in with challenges as well. So for me, I think it's super important. If I were doing today what I thought I was going to be doing 20 years ago, I was sadly mistaken. And most of us who've been in the field for 15 plus years have found that to be true. The way that I started my practice and the work that I'm doing now are 2 entirely different things. And one is not better or worse than the other. it is different. And it's different because we pay attention to the world around us. We pay attention to everything that's happening and think about how that is impacting our businesses and the work that we're doing. So it's not all group, it's not all grants, it's not all any one thing. And Bianca's point was well taken. There was a time where we had almost 75% of our entire budget was tied up in one grant. And that was the moment where I went, wow, we are in big trouble. We need to diversify. So I think in terms of, she talked about online, she talked about, I love to encourage folks to offer different curriculums. I can't be a competent in every population, but there are a lot of people that are in this room right now that are competent in populations that I don't know anything about. So teach me, write a curriculum, share a course, right? Do a course online, share with each other in the field about what you know and you know really well. Among those things, it is the challenge, right? So having that perspective and that flexibility, if you want to do the same thing every day when you get up, this is not the field for you. It's just not. I don't know, and I kind of dig that. I don't know what my day is going to be like from any, one day to the next. I have some basic idea of what I'm going to be doing, but there fires, right? Something happens, this happens, I need to deal with that. I've got we had a horse who cut his leg, and, we had x-rays this morning. Life on life's terms. So flexibility is the name of the game. And if you aren't currently as flexible as you'd like to be, seek out ways to get there, right? Seek out, and you may think I'm kidding, but I do things like take up juggling, learn a new skill that requires you to do stuff that you don't like to do. And for me, that would be math, right? So I'm going to practice fraction. I know it sounds crazy, but try things that are outside of your comfort zone so that you get to challenge yourself again and again. Remember what it feels like to be a client pushing hard to reach something new. And I'm still a client. I'm still pushing hard to reach something new. So getting too comfortable with status quo, I think, is a huge challenge. And I've seen many, many businesses go under because they haven't been able to read the signs in the bigger industry of helping people and gotten too mono-focused on this is who I am and what I want to do without paying attention to, as Tammy was saying, what is the market, what is needed? What can I fill in my community that will serve my community? So anyhow, and we have Bianca again. It's a miracle.
Yay, thank you. Okay, what do we do here, people? Maybe we should go to Tammy and then we'll try for Bianca again. How's that sound?
Plan.
All right. So when we talk about challenges, one of my initial challenges was being able to be on insurance panels and bill insurance, and I think that was an interesting mountain to climb. And I mean, I just hit it head on and went and talked to the clinical director of our Oregon health plan. It just so happens I met somebody who knew somebody, and anyway, we made the connection. And ironically, in her internship, she did equine assisted psychotherapy down in California, and she knew exactly what I was talking about. And although most of the insurance companies, if you call them and say, will you pay for equine assisted psychotherapy? Their answer is no. Well, it's because they think it's therapeutic riding. And so my biggest challenge is getting people to understand that what I do is mental health. It's not therapeutic riding. And that's been an interesting hill to climb. But once I was able to get through to people, especially those that hold the purse strings, that it's not therapeutic riding, then I was able to move forward really well and get on some insurance panels and turn in my my notes and my service plans that included equine assisted psychotherapy. But you have to have an underlying model that you're working from, and mine is DBT. So that's the way I was able to get them to understand is I do DBT, I do it experientially, and we partner with horses to learn and to practice those skills. And so some of that is just developing that language to get the people with the purse strings to understand that this is clinical mental health. It's not therapeutic riding. And I think the industry as a whole, that's one of the struggles, and we all need to continue to work on that, of getting them to understand that it is different, and that these are clinical interventions. These are not just playing with the horses.
Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, I think that idea about just really understanding what the service is, whether it's EAL, whether it's mental health, whether it exactly what it is, what's the primary service, is just so important. Okay, Bianca, let's try it. But now you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me now? Oh, thank God. All right, I can't move. I'm on my phone. Yeah, challenges. So continuing to push the boundaries, continuing to learn and educate yourself, but also to stay very true to your uniqueness, and to make sure that, you know, as Tammy was saying, and I'm sorry, Shannon, I jumped out when you were yarning, but making sure that people understand it's not about riding the horse, and unless that is what you offer. But it's not about riding the horse, and it's not about just brushing, but also that sometimes it is, well, I think it's the relationship between all the beings being present that's important. So really being able to communicate what it is that you do, what it is that this is, and understanding that just because someone down the road does it a certain way doesn't mean that's how you do it, and making sure that you communicate that properly. Networking. Continue to go outside of your comfort zone. Just because you know someone does it a certain way doesn't mean that's the way you do it. And continue to have a social presence. Continue to really, you know, see what this will look like. And don't expect that the clients are just going to come to you. You need to have a business focus on this. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to continue. You're not going to be able to feed yourself or your horses. And it's not about subsidizing the service. The service is paying for itself. And also, yeah, look, the way I deliver a service is very different. I don't halter my horses for the sessions. I do everything where consent is the absolute key to delivering the service. And when you're working with people who have been restrained and tied up and things like that, approaching business like that, approaching the sessions like that can give them a lot of a sense of calm and reassurance. So yeah, so basically educate yourself on both business and professional. Continue to do the research, continuing to you know, see what's being offered, but educate the community as well. And that can be as simple as making sure the media says equine assisted rather than equine therapy. And that can become very confusing to members of the public. And so, yeah, taking that point on. I think, did I answer it? I'm not sure.
That was great. That was absolutely great and perfect timing. We're just right on the money. You guys are amazing, all three of you. Your timekeeping, yeah. Camilla and I are ever grateful. We didn't have to intervene one time. So,
Can I say one thing?
yes, please.
Am I on mute or not mute? I don't know because I can't do it on my phone. Okay, beautiful. So for those, regardless of where you are, I do offer an online, like 1 or 2 hour masterclass. The 2 hour masterclass on business planning, you will complete your 1-page business plan as part of that. The 1 hour masterclass is on NDIS for EAP and EAL businesses, that's specifically to Australia, but use those services where you can be starting and operating successful businesses right from the start. And I don't receive any grant money, okay? And I am a single mum paying for a mortgage, operating a successful business and employing 4 staff. Okay, so awesome. You can mute me again now.
I love it. Thank you all so much. Now we're not going to let you off the call without hearing now your word now. So if you put yourself right here, right now, at this point in your career, at this point in the industry, what is a word that kind of encapsulates who you are right now at this moment and the industry right now at this moment? And since we've got you right here, Bianca, you better take it away before you go somewhere.
Passionate, always passionate is me. And the industry, incredible opportunity.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
And
so
Shannon,
much.
your turn.
All right. Oh gosh, myself right now, I would say energized. Just energized, just so excited to get up and do it again and do it again and do it again. Never know what the horses are going to bring and what the clients are going to bring, and that's a great day. The field, I would say, growing definitely, and growing isn't always it isn't always pretty, right? But I think we can grow together better than we can grow apart. So that's my wish for the field, is that we grow together rather than push apart.
Nice.
Tammy, you're up.
All right. So as far as how I feel about now in the industry, it's bountiful. I mean, there's tons of opportunities, and there's a lot of need for the work that we do. And I see that every day when I have people reach out to me that I'm full. My practice is full right now, but there's a ton of opportunities, that are ripe for it, especially after this COVID stuff where people have been cooped up at home, and I've continued to do in-person sessions, and my clients are so grateful for that. But I think there's also that reminder that doing these sessions in person and being connected and grounded with horses is really powerful. And there's a huge need for it. If more of us could figure out how to kind of make that work with the finances, there's a ton of opportunities. And I think that also speaks for our profession about there's a ton of opportunities. And a part of that is just figuring out how to make the business end of it work. And there are plenty of opportunities to do that. And I think also by sharing with forums like this about, in the beginning, I didn't have anything like this. I figured it all out by.
Wait, don't go too far here, Tammy. I want to know, how about you? What about you? What's your word right now sitting here? So we've got bountiful and lots of opportunities for the industry. How about for Tammy? How are you now, right
now? So still very passionate. Yeah,
Nice.
Very passionate. Highly motivated, very passionate.
Nice. Thank you so much. And thank you all very much, Camilla. Thank you, Callie, thank you. I don't see you right now, but you're out there. And thank you so much to our panelists for everything. And thank you to our audience for being here with us. So what we can do now is, if the panelists have just a minute or two, we can do a little quick debrief, or if you need to go, I totally understand. You go for it, whatever you need. And then we'll just ask the audience to go ahead and start signing off the call. And again, thank you all, and we'll collect all your questions and thoughts and bring it right on over to the Facebook group for a continued dialogue and discussion. So thank you and take care.